think this is a great idea that we finally set together to discuss MVC more thoroughly and more formally. You're going to be walking me through the MVC modules based on your experience, based on your knowledge, and how you incorporated that in your daily practice with your clients and in your personal life.
Well, I'm glad you're taking the course, Taz, and I'm glad that you are interested in nonviolent communication. It's becoming more and more popular, and for good reason. I think for me, I come across nonviolent communication by chance through someone who introduced the book to me. The book became the catalyst from which I took further training. Retreats and weekend trainings, as well as a year-long program that I did, a leadership program regarding nonviolent communication. So I come at it with about now just the better part of half a decade of experience, learning and facilitation. And I'm glad to be working like this with you so that we can both work through the modules that we're going to go through in this course. I'm excited for it, in fact.
Likewise. I knew that I needed to ameliorate my communication skills. So I really came from a need. But, when I first looked at it, it was communication as a whole. So I didn't know exactly what I should go through. Should it be like a formal university program I need to attend? Should it be just hanging out with the right people? So I did not know that such a program or a process called NVC exists before I actually met my friend who introduced me to you. So how about we talk about what MVC first? What is MVC, and how do you see MVC from your background?
So it's a good question, Taz. I think that's a good place to start. Nonviolent communication, also known as compassionate communication, is a process sort of put together and packaged by the late Marshall B. Rosenberg, who dies in 2015. So he wrote the book called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, translated into some 40 different languages around the world, and it becomes very popular. From this book and from Marshall Rosenberg's work around compassionate communication and bringing it to the world, many different schools of nonviolent communication get established around the world. First, it gains popularity through his outreach to many communities, to many people, starting in the United States and moving outward from there. I'm one of those who he has reached. And our community in different parts of the world, nonviolent communication has reached literally every corner of the world as far as I know, and for good reason. Compassionate communication is about what it's called, being in a place of compassion and authenticity in our communication. And this relates to our communication with ourselves and communication with others. So that's the foundation. And it's based on a premise that human beings want nothing more than to contribute to one another's well-being. And when I heard Rosenberg say that, I think I read it for the first time, I said, that I can't argue against that. And I just think of all the times that, you've contributed to someone's well-being or your own in a way that is rich and life-enriching. It just gives you an indescribable feeling of oneness with yourself, oneness with others. And so that's where it starts for me.
I actually came from the same kind of place. When I first was kind of drawn to this NVC. But when you said oneness with oneself, I think that's where it started with me. I think that's something I always needed. I always felt sort of not feeling at peace with myself when it comes to communicating certain feelings or certain needs, or knowing exactly what I want or what I need, and what's the difference between wanting and needing, and also that kind of spills outwardly of course, to communicating with other people, especially with loved ones, and having these kind of conflicts. And one of my biggest fear is being misunderstood, right? Saying things I didn't mean to say, and then contributing to hurting someone or hurting the relationship with that person.
Right. So that it's interesting that you come at it more from a perspective of intrapersonal communication rather than interpersonal communication.
That's right.
I come to it from interpersonal communication, wanting to, as you mentioned and you touched upon, connect in a more enriching way with not only loved ones, but even people we disagree with. Even people who are on the other side of an argument, for example, let's say. So regarding conflict resolution, myself as a mediator, that's something I come from. I come from that background, and I was interested in that. Like, how can conflicts be beneficial, number one? Number two is, how can every side win? And I looked, and then what Marshall Rosenberg would say in such a thing, and has said, I should say, is that when everyone's needs are met, there's no losers. There are no losers in that case. And though I thought at that time that's quite idealistic, but when we talk about the language of needs, which we'll get in the future modules about the nonviolent communication process, when we get to that, we'll go into some of the distinctions you just touched upon, like the difference between a want and a need. What do we mean by need in nonviolent communication? What do we mean by feelings? What do we mean by feelings and emotions? These have definitions that are quite specific in nonviolent communication, and they're used in the process of inculcating compassion in the way we interact with ourselves, as you talked about, and also with others. And that's the starting point. That starting point is kind of the why. Why? It sounds like a lot of people come to nonviolent communication, including myself, because we have some commitment to something other than communication itself. Maybe it's to nonviolence. Maybe it's to the establishment or contribution to a more peaceful world. And every wisdom tradition on the planet talks about a peaceful world being possible only when someone is in a peaceful state themselves, an individual, then moving outward, peaceful family, peaceful community, and then hopefully peaceful world, contributing to a more peaceful world. It's not by any means idealistic in the sense that this is our ticket to avoiding all war, this is our path to avoiding all conflict. It's quite the opposite. It's how to engage with others and ourselves in a way that does not promote a black and white simple paradigm, right, wrong, etc.
Regardless of the consequences, what one can end up with is a sort of like a dignified way to differ with the other. When I read about it the first time at a theoretical level, before actually started practicing it consciously, it seemed like too good to be true. And as you mentioned, I was like, this sounds a little bit idealistic, too idealistic. Like, and there's a lot of mental effort that goes into it, and it sort of becomes like almost like formulaic in a way. But as I kind of delved into it, and whenever the situation arises for me to implement what I've learned, it kind of started to take a more natural kind of tone,
Yeah, let's start there. So in this exchange that we're going to have, in this course, we're going to go through the process. So if you'd like, let's name the modules.